makes me want to holler, go away. I need more peace and hope and love. Where do I find it in this crazy old world? I need strategies, strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio. Every time I listen, Lauren and David share strategies for living, and it makes me aware. I got strategies for living, strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio.
Oh, you know, we need them. Yeah, we need those strategies for living. So are you ready? Are you ready for your daily dose of radio rehab?
Emphasis on the rehab today.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, really.
Maybe for the whole system.
Yeah. Hey, folks, welcome. Welcome into another edition of Strategies for a Living. I'm Dr. David McMillian. She is psychotherapist, TLPC Lauren Leon McMillian. You know, Lauren, we talk about trauma in childhood a lot.
Sure.
Today, we're going to take the cake. We're going to bake the cake, ice it, and take it.
Okay. Well, where are we taking it to?
I don't know. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine. Our life strategist today was raised in the shadows of Madrid's most notorious drug slum because he is from an American missionary family who planted roots among heroin addicts, and they built an unlikely church. Jonathan Tepper is our life strategist today. He's got a new memoir out. It's called Shooting Up. And wow. His childhood spent in San Blas, I think that's the way to pronounce it, where syringes littered the playgrounds, and his closest friends are recovering junkies, twice his age. And I mean, wow.
Well, talk about turning the wounds into wings, right?
Oh.
By taking lived experience and turning it into something that we can all benefit and use from.
Absolutely. And this is, Shooting Up is a must read for, lots and lots of us.
I think there's not any of us who is not touched in some way or formed by addiction. Yeah. And so I think it's an important read for all of us.
And if not, then childhood trauma hits you, you know. So that covers the territory.
That covers it all.
Yeah. Folks, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you being a part of Strategies for Living. And we appreciate our sponsors making it all possible. The Robinson Film Center and Azalea Cleaners and Pintail Roofing and Learning RX. We train your brain. The Balanced Life Wellness Center. Fertitta's Delicatessen, home of The Godfather. Alligator Italian Sausage, pretty good Muffies too. Uprising Addiction Center. And Mira Direct Primary Care. Back in a moment, we're meeting Jonathan Tepper, author of Shooting Up. He's our life strategist today here on Strategies for Living. Be right back.
Tune in daily, find the light. Healthy mind and spirits bright. Strategies for living strong. Feel the vibe, it won't go wrong. The body moves and soul align. Catch the rhythm, feel the time. Radio rehab every day. Chase those clouds of gray away. Your daily dose of radio rehab. Lift you up when skies seem drab. Mind and body, spirits free. Living life in harmony.
And welcome into Strategies for Living. Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillian. Let's welcome into the program now Jonathan Tepper. He is author of several acclaimed financial books, including The Myth of Capitalism. He's a Rhodes Scholar, He earned degrees in history and economics from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and MLit from the University of Oxford. He was born in the United States, raised in Mexico as a very young child. Jonathan came of age in Madrid's San Blas neighborhood, where his parents ran one of the country's first drug rehabilitation centers. And Shooting Up is his first memoir. And we are just delighted that Jonathan is with us here on Strategies for Living. Jonathan, welcome.
Yes, welcome in.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
So, wow, so many questions.
Quite the unique upbringing.
Yeah. So let's see. When Elliot
Thank you.
When Elliot and Mary, your parents, go to, it was 1985, and they moved to, am I saying the name correctly, San Blas?
Yes, I'm Blas, yes.
So do you remember the decision being made? Was it lengthy, or was it a quick decision for your folks?
Well, so my parents regularly prayed and spoke to God, and we weren't part of that discussion. So they would tell us what they had decided or what they felt God had called them to do. And so we had been missionaries in Mexico before arriving in Spain, and they just told us that we were going. And then when they decided to move to Spain, again, they told us. So we weren't really part of the decision-making process. We were just on the receiving end of their decisions.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And how old were you in 1985 when the family moved to Madrid?
So the family actually arrived in Spain in '83, but the drug center itself started in 1985, and I was 7 years old in 1983, and so from 7, 8, 9, I was involved with my parents' work, but trying to help young men and women in the neighborhood who were on heroin, and so we'd go out and hand out flyers to them. So I was very young.
Yeah.
What was that like through a kid's eyes to see that so up close and personal, and have them be your neighbors?
So people often ask if I was very afraid or if it was dangerous, and perhaps there was an element of that. But as a young child, my brothers and I thought it was an adventure. We didn't really know much better, and we were involved in our parents' work. And so it's only with the passage of time when I speak to people about this that they're shocked or horrified, and sometimes when people were reading the book Shooting Up, and they're angry at my parents for having involved us in their work. But at the time, it really did feel sort of very, very natural, and that's why I start the book with a quote from George Orwell, who said, "How natural it all seemed then, how remote and improbable now."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever go through a point in time where you were angry at your parents for the decision, and you had to come to grips with what that experience meant for you? Or
so it wasn't the moving to San Blas that upset me when I was a kid. It was much more years later. I just remember very vividly in 1987. So when you're a missionary and your support comes from the United States, the churches that send tithes and so on, the exchange rates depend on how much you actually get. And so in the 1980s, the dollar had been overvalued and very strong early in the 80s, and then it lost about half its value from 1985 to 87. So overnight, our salary, my parents' salary, was halved, and they didn't have much money to begin with. And then certainly at that stage, they didn't even have enough money to send us to a missionary school that didn't cost all that much. And so my mother had to homeschool us for 2 years. And I do remember that period being a bit angry. My father he had studied economics at Cambridge. He had an MBA from Harvard. It's not a typical missionary background, but all his friends were, very wealthy and doing well. And we were being homeschooled and, without much to eat many weeks. And that was a period when I was angry and resented my parents' call.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that I want people to understand, though, and Lauren, you touched on this already, but I think it's important. This is not a you don't hold back in this memoir, and yet it's hopeful. There's hopefulness in this memoir. It's about resilience. It's about love. It's about redemption. And I want people to know that, because I'm not sure that, when if you're going through the bookstore or the way we do today, I guess we
browse
online and we see shooting up and we see these precious little boys on the front cover,
right.
We may not, and we don't read anything else. We may miss the fact that, wow, how provocative and yet captivating and hopeful this book is, Jonathan.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And the Times in London did a review of it, and I was very grateful for it, because I didn't pick the subtitle to my book. I picked, the title I picked, Shooting Up, but the subtitle is A Memoir of Love, Loss, and Addiction. And if you read it, you think it's a misery memoir, and it's about heroin and just awful things. But I really did write the book to be a testament to my friends, to be a love letter to family and to friends. And I think that the book is full of pain, certainly in terms of loss, but it's full of hope and full of love. And those are the things that I think move the world and move us as humans.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, what pushed you over the edge? It's taken you a while. You've written other books, but it's taken you a while to get around to writing a memoir. What pushed you over the edge?
I wrote it. Oh yeah, so I believe it or not, started writing this in 2000 and probably 2004, early 2005. I can't remember the exact month, but I was working at a hedge fund and I was living in Manhattan, and I went to a Barnes and Noble on 82nd Street in the Upper West Side and saw this beautiful book called Flying Over 96th Street: Memoir of an East Harlem White Boy. And it was this beautiful story about a young, sort of blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid like me. His parents moved him to East Harlem, and he grew up around Black and Puerto Rican kids, and his parents were involved in the local church and literacy programs. And so I just thought, this is like my life. And when I saw that, I thought I need to write about my friends who had died and the neighborhood. And so that got me started writing. But when I finished the book, so I was writing evenings and weekends, it was a full-time investing.
Right.
It got rejected here and there, and I just put it away, and, investing and starting businesses got in the way. And it was only really in 2023 that a mentor of mine said that I really should get it published before my father dies. And I thought, he's right. And so I did it a bit further, and then my literary agent got a contract, and so I'm glad it's finally coming out.
So, what does Dad think?
Well, it's funny. I think he's half joking, but he says that he thinks I'm a little hard on him because he does come across as a bit of a autocrat sometimes at home, and disciplinarian and visionary. And he's a deeply inspiring and complex character. But he loves it, and he thinks that I told the story as it was. And I think the best thing that you can do as a writer is to try to render people honestly in all their complexity. And, I think that really comes across. And even people who start the book sort of hating him or thinking that, he's making a big mistake, have this sort of grudging admiration for him by the end of it. And I think that's, I've done my job as a writer. I'm trying to capture him as a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I've got this. We got a couple of minutes before we go to break. So we were talking earlier about you and your brothers didn't get a chance to, your parents prayed about making this move. You guys weren't in on that discussion. Hypothetical question here. Let's say that you had been, let's say, that you could go back. Would you advise your parents, from everything that you know now, going back? What would the grown-up Jonathan today advise his parents as they were praying back then to make this move?
I mean, honestly, I think that because it all did work out in the end, there were, my brother's guy, I think, the addicts that we worked with became like older brothers and sisters. They're a very loving community. My parents have done an incredible work, starting with one addict, and now it's in 20 countries with 2,000 addicts. That certainly colors my view now. And I think that, all the difficulty or sacrifices they made, and even, dangerous situations, certainly were worth it. But it wasn't without cost, and it wasn't without quite a lot of pain along the way. But I think you can't look back or try to relive your life getting rid of, pain or getting rid of some things that are difficult. I think it's all part of the same package. And, if my parents didn't move to San Blas, I think my life would actually be a lot poorer. And I'm grateful to them that they did that. And so it's like trying to sort of, mix and match and pick what you want. And I don't know that life works that way. So I don't actually know I want to tell my parents anything.
Yeah.
That's neat.
We are talking to Jonathan Tepper today. Interesting life strategist. What a story. He's written a memoir of love, of loss, and addiction. It's called Shooting Up. You can find it wherever you buy books right now, out from Infinite Books. And we've got more in this conversation today with our life strategist, Jonathan Tepper, here on Strategies for Living. Don't go away. Much more to come.
Facing the same old problems day to day makes you wanna holler, get away. Looking for the road that'll get me there. Looking for hope and peace to spare. Looking for strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio.
And welcome back into Strategies for Living Radio. Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillian. Jonathan Tepper is our life strategist today. I do hope you have your seatbelt buckled.
There's a lot to unpack here. A lot of gold.
There is a lot of
if you
and
dig.
great book. It's called Shooting Up. Don't let the title fool you, because this is a very hope-filled book. And it's about love, loss, and it's about addiction. And Jonathan, a lot of kids grow up and they have their heroes, right? One of I guess my heroes growing up were Don Meredith for the Dallas Cowboys, and later on Archie Manning for the Saints, and but your heroes were people like Raul and Jean-Brie. Introduce us to those gentlemen, would you?
Certainly. So when we were handing out flyers in the streets to start the drug rehab, the first addict who came to live with a young Australian missionary, Lindsay, who was working with my parents, was Raul. And Raul was, he'd been obviously a heroin addict, but he was also a thief. He'd held people up at knife point, and his nickname was El Tocho, which means stocky. He was a thick, rough guy, and he had a lot of charisma. People respected him. They also feared him. And so when he entered the drug center, he brought all his friends in, and then they brought their friends in. And so almost overnight, in like a 1 year period, went from being one addict to 30 addicts, and he was the leader. He had sort of, had gotten off drugs and was trying to encourage them to get off drugs. So he was a really inspiring figure, but he was also very playful with us, and he was like an older brother, and he used to take us out to play soccer and football and to teach us things. And so when we were little kids, we just absolutely adored him. And even though there was a huge age difference, we really did think of him as an older brother.
Yeah.
And he was like an older brother to a lot of the men in the center when they would come in. So he was definitely a hero. And over the years, all the addicts had shared needles, and almost all of them had become HIV positive in the
Right.
1980s with AIDS,
Right.
or would end up developing AIDS. There's
Right.
a 5-year incubation period on average. And so as the years passed, I would spend my time in junior high and high school going to the hospital to visit him. And when he was out of the hospital, he preached. He was this very inspiring, basically sort of self-taught. No one had taught him how to preach, and he was eloquent, and people hung on every word. And I still have recordings of his sermons. And it was just this sort of grace that he had facing death, inspiring others, even as he lost weight, working, helping people. And so Raul really was a hero to me. And you'd asked about somebody who is another dear friend. He was always a sort of very thin, lanky man, soft-spoken, but, he was a getaway driver for a gang of bank robbers and had spent 5 years in jail when he was young. And he always just used to look after me like a younger brother. And he started a drugs rehab center in Naples, Italy, and I went to visit him. And he sent me an Italian Bible. He'd send me Italian books. And so he really spurred my love of Italian literature and culture, and it's made my world much bigger through his encouragement. And Raul died in 1995, and Hamdi died in 1996. And those two men are, I think about them every day and miss them.
I'm glad you brought up the AIDS crisis, because this is an intimate portrait of compassion during the AIDS crisis, and told through your eyes, a little guy watching, your parents choose people who are damned, really, in society, and in the process, getting to witness miracles. When I was doing my internship, I wasn't finished with my master's degree in counseling. I got assigned to an age group, a men's age group that was held at Schumpert, the old Schumpert Medical Center here. And there were 7 or 8 guys in the group, and my job was to go in and do group, provide group. I'm the only one still alive.
Wow.
From that group.
Yeah.
Of course,
Incredible.
I was the only one that wasn't HIV positive, but it just how times have changed, and if I'm honest, when I got that assignment, I tussled with it a bit because we didn't know, I remember one group meeting, we were at the table, and I don't remember the details, but it got into some grieving stuff. And so a couple of people got loud, and some of us had drinks in front of us, right? We were around a table, and I had an open Coke can on the table, and there was loudness, and you know how people sputter when they have an emotional expression. And I remember what a poignant moment that was for me, to think I've got a soft drink in front of me, and I don't know what am I going to do. And I decided that it was important for me to go ahead and drink my Coke, which is what I did. But and I'm not trying to, make me a hero or anything. Right. It's just, it's a story that in some way seems so long ago, and yet it wasn't.
And Jonathan, in many ways, growing up around your parents' rehab meant losing people you knew and even called friends. And that's a unique kind of exposure to loss at an early age. How did those experiences, how did they shape your understanding of addiction and life and loss and grief? How did that shape you?
So I think that particularly grief, I think, and loss are difficult at any age, but I think they're even more difficult when you're young. your personality and who you are is still being formed and changing, and it completely affected my own life. You don't never recover or go back to being the same person. You're a different person, and I hope and think that my family and I, the way we responded to loss was that it makes you more loving and more empathetic. There were families in the drug rehab center in the church where parents had lost sons and daughters to overdoses and then to AIDS. And I hope that it made us have much greater empathy and love for them in that process. So, and it leads you to try to live a life, I think, of quality more than quantity when you realize that life is fleeting and precious.
Yes, yeah. And I think it was a gift for you as a young man. I wish we would teach grieving
To kids, yeah.
to kids.
We need to know.
Yeah, but we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for your honesty and how it helped you and shaped you.
Oh, thank you. I think it's certainly, I think it's good to raise awareness and to educate people about these things. The unfortunate reality, I think, though, is that it's one of these things that it's almost impossible to understand unless you experience it. But obviously, I hope. Roger Ebert, the film critic, said that movies are an empathy machine. And I think books are too. And I hope that those who read this book who have not experienced grief or loss, it can generate empathy and help them understand. And then for those who have experienced it, I hope it lets them realize that they are not alone in their suffering and grief.
Yeah.
Your parents and you and your brothers have become new heroes for me. We think, and this is not I don't want to get into criticism here, but we hear the Gospels, we hear what Jesus did and said, and then we might go out and go to our chicken dinner and green bean casserole suppers and but you guys, did the true work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read the Gospels,
Yeah.
I hear Jesus didn't,
He went out and lived among them.
He went out and lived,
Yeah.
and you guys, that's why you guys are my new heroes, because you literally lived the life. And as you said, your father had choices. He was, had degrees where he could have made a lot of money. But he didn't choose that path.
Well, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. And there's a quote that I have in the epilogue. Comes from Arthur Ashe, who died of AIDS in 1993. And he said that heroism is not the desire to surpass all others at whatever the cost. It's the desire to help others at whatever the cost. And I think that it's not some small acts of, some grand acts of kindness. It's rather the sort of small day-to-day things that matter, and they all add up over time. And that's what my parents tried to do. Living out their the Christian beliefs and Sermon on the Mount. I think that anyone is capable of doing these things, and the proof of it is that the drug center is run by former addicts themselves, and they are the ones who day to day are showing that love and compassion.
Yeah, and I think that's it's become, as I mentioned, now it's one of the world's largest drug rehab networks. I don't think there's a coincidence there.
No, yeah.
Don't think there's
It's
a coincidence.
The fruits of the labor.
The book is Shooting Up. It's a memoir of love, of loss, and addiction. Out from Infinite Books, wherever you buy books. Jonathan Tepper is our life strategist today and the author of that book. And we've got more. Got more with life strategist Jonathan Tepper here on Strategies for Living. We'll be right back.
We all have problems. ones every day. We all need help along the way. We need strategies, strategies, strategies for living radio.
And welcome back in. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. Got to get this book, Shooting Up, Jonathan Tepper. He's our life strategist today. Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillian with you here on Strategies for Living. And wow, what a powerful, powerful memoir. And well, it touches grief, it touches love, it touches addiction, it touches so many areas of our lives.
Yeah, we've touched on so many. I think it's important, that we touch more fully on the addiction piece, because it just impacts not just everyone, but everyone is at least in some way impacted by someone else. And Jonathan, one of my interests from you and from your experience, I mean, you've seen how addiction is handled in other parts of the world. And I'll never forget, one of my favorite classes from college was the brain and language. And there was the teacher brought up the importance and the power of words, and in particular metaphors. And this was the first time in my life that I had considered that to such a degree. And of course, one of the examples she brought up was the one we use in America around addiction, right? Which is the war on drugs. And so, Jonathan, from your experience, how has that impacted the way we look at addiction, the way we handle it, and how could it be better?
So I'm not an expert in sort of drug strategies across countries. A lot of my experience comes from my own parents' work, and the truth is, I think drugs are not a criminal problem. They're not a medical problem. There are underlying reasons why people become addicts, and relapse in recovery is common. So criminalizing behavior, where people can turn their lives around and where they don't necessarily turn their lives around the first time, I think is very, very damaging. You end up locking up people who, certainly could turn their lives around. And then if you treat something as a purely medical issue, you don't deal with any of the other underlying problems. And so I think that, the more options addicts have to seek help, the better. And I think the more you deal with a lot of the root causes, and a lot of people are seeking love, community. They do drugs often as a means of escape. The more you can deal with the root causes, I think the better.
Yeah. Just from your experience of growing up, what did you witness? What were some of what were some of those underlying causes? A lot of people say connection. Some people say trauma. What were a lot of the things that you saw showing up over and over again?
So in some cases, like in the case of San Blas, where I grew up, there was very high youth unemployment at the time. Families were very numerous, so there were 4, 5, 6 kids to many families, and kids were out in the street all the time, with not much to do. And so if one friend started doing drugs, and drugs became very plentiful after the death of Franco, who had been the dictator, well, people started experimenting. And so that was, one thing that was sort of a larger sort of macro issue with the neighborhood. But, at a particular level, if your friends are shooting up and experimenting with drugs, then, it's likely that you might as well. And sometimes, there's, fathers were abusive or drunks or not there. And sometimes you have a lack of, positive role models and supervision. And then friends become those role models, and they might not be the best models. So there's a variety of things, and sometimes there's personal tragedy, and then people use drugs to sort of numb the pain, and all of these things are things that are not. It's not the drugs itself that's the problem. It's the growing up in broken families, the abuse, and things like that.
Yeah.
So, if you were an advisor. If you could get the ear of the powers that be that are in charge of how we go about tackling the issue, no question that drugs and addiction continues to be a massive issue. Even though we declared the war,
well, maybe even because right?
Yeah, maybe so. I think the war was declared back in the 70s. Yeah. What would you suggest? What would you say we need to we need to focus on now?
First, I grew up at a drug rehab center. I worked very actively with my parents. I've written a book now about these experiences, but I don't, and I hope I'm humble enough not to hold myself out as an authority on public policy or what people might do. What I can say is that I think that locking people up for possessing drugs is certainly not a winning strategy. If you have a war that's been going on for 50 years, chances are you're not winning it. And I think that I would certainly decriminalize drugs, where people shouldn't be locked away for doing them or for possessing drugs. You can still make possessing drugs misdemeanors. You can criminalize drug dealing. With a lot of European countries, basically, it's the dealing that's criminalized. It's not the possession or consumption. And, so you don't end up basically permanently making it difficult for people to get jobs or to, put them away for, with 3 strikes rules. Those are the kinds of things that I think are very detrimental and lacking, a constructive response. And then as far as the rehab aspect, I think, different addicts respond in different ways. My parents had one example, which was it was a very kind, Christian, loving community where addicts worked, and it gave them a sense of responsibility. But I think the more avenues for rehabilitation that are available, the better. And it's not a binary approach where only one works. And I think that people need more options rather than fewer.
Yeah. We're just entering, as we're taping this program, we're just entering the season of Lent, which is in the Christian world supposed to be about transformation. Mm. It strikes me that transformation is kind of a theme throughout this book. And so, I don't know, it just struck me. If you're looking for a book to read for Lent, maybe Shooting Up is your book, because there's there's really a connecting theme of transformation throughout this book, Jonathan. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you. I think the themes of love, empathy, and compassion and grace are what I think my parents tried to live out, and what the addicts tried to show to the new addicts that enter the program. And I hope it's one that resonates with the readers.
Yeah.
How have you and your life transformed after writing this book?
That's a great question. I didn't set out to write the book for it to be cathartic or to get something off my chest. Which some people do when they write memoirs. I really wanted to write this as a tribute, a testament to my dear friends and family that we've lost, and that was the reason I wrote it. But I do have to say that the process of writing it was definitely cathartic and helped me gain a much greater perspective on my own life, and I think it gave me a much greater appreciation for my family and friends. And when I was finishing writing the book, my literary agent and the editor were asking me to put some thoughts together in the epilogue. And I just thought, I'll tell a great story and people will take from it what they will.
Right.
But they made me think about it a little. And I write in the epilogue that one of the themes of the book is suffering, and I wrote suffering itself is meaningless. Mm-hmm. It's our response to it that gives it meaning. Mm-hmm. And we can choose to harden our hearts and become bitter or not, or it can lead to more love and more empathy. And my mother said that the answer to suffering is always more love. And I think that's one thing that certainly I think has helped transform me in the writing of this book, is sort of to remember that, and I hope try to live it out daily.
Well said. The book is Shooting Up. Jonathan Tepper is the author. At your favorite bookseller. We'll be back to wrap up today here on Strategies for Living. Wow. What a great book. Shooting Up. Jonathan Tepper. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Strategies for Living. If you're looking for a book, maybe if you're looking for a book to read for Lent, Shooting Up would be a great choice. Jonathan Tepper, Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillian here on Strategies for a Living. I sure am glad that you decided to dust off the memoir and decide to get this out.
Yes.
Probably no coincidences, so it probably is out when it needs to be out. But when people read and then finish Shooting Up, Jonathan, what do you want people to take away? What do you want for them to have taken away from Shooting Up?
So the story at its heart is a story of love. It's a story of love of family, love of friends, and it's also a story of loss. And I hope that if people take anything away, it's a greater sense of love and empathy for those around them, and even those that, in this case, there are heroin addicts and people suffering from AIDS who are like lepers, and a lot of people that we might think of as being completely different and other to us. I hope that's what people will take away.
Yeah. When we too often we see when we addict and we have a label in our mind, but you destroy our labels.
Yeah, you bring us back to humanity.
You introduce us up close and personal to people who became your heroes, your friends, they're all human. They're all very human. So thank you for being a great life strategist here on Strategies for Living.
Well, thank you so much.
And folks, thank you for being with us, and we appreciate our sponsors who make it all possible. The Robinson Film Center and Azalea Cleaners, Pintail Roofing, Learning RX, We Train Your Brain, the Balanced Life Wellness Center, Fertitta's Delicatessen, home of The Godfather, Alligator Italian Sausage, pretty good Muffies too, Uprising Addiction Center, and Mira Direct Primary Care. If today were the last day of your life, you only had one more phone call to make, who would you call? And what would you say? And why are you waiting? Make the call. For Lauren Leon McMillian and for Jonathan Tepper, I'm David McMillian. See you next time right here on Strategies for Living.